sex ed teachers of Reddit, what was the one most disturbing question or class you've ever taught? One of the jocks wanted to know if you were supposed to put your testicles inside a woman's vagina during intercourse. If you masturbate yourself, doesn't that mean you're gay? It was something to think about. In sex ed during high school, the class was being given in the theater, with the gym teacher providing instruction at the front of the auditorium and us all spread out in the seats. The teacher was obviously less comfortable doing this from her normal physical education activities. After most of the class was over, the teacher asked if there were any questions, and there were 3 to 4 normal questions. Then one girl asked if I give a guy a blowjob and keep it in my mouth, and then I pass it to his mouth, and he spits it back inside me, can I get pregnant? The teacher just sort of stared, and the girl squirmed a bit. I can't for the life of me remember if people laughed or we were just all so dumbstruck by this whole sequence. After a while I think the teacher stammered out a response, but I honestly forget what it was. But I will never forget the question. I once went to a lecture on someone who teaches sex ed to those with disabilities. She said she once had a student say to her, I like this girl, I can't wait to rape her. Dude didn't know what that word meant whatsoever. Less disturbing and more naive, an 8th grader stayed after her health class to talk to the teacher as I was coming into the room to teach my next section. I overheard her explain that the teacher had said if a girl's period is late, she should take a pregnancy test. But did she need to do that if she'd never had sex? The teacher, thinking perhaps there'd been some contact other than intercourse that had the girl worried, asked how long it had been since her last period, to which she said she hadn't had her first one yet. So, a virgin who hasn't started menstruating thought she could be pregnant because her first period hadn't arrived by age 13. Not a teacher. I was in college intro to psych, and one of my classmates asked our GTA why humans couldn't have sex with animals in front of all of us. The GTA turned red and said it was for several reasons and she'd speak with her after class. The student kept prodding and asking the same thing different ways. The GTA finally dismissed class. That girl never came back to class, and she wasn't joking around. She seriously didn't understand it. My husband was the teacher. He was new, fresh out of college, teaching in an all-boys, $20,000 a year school. It was the ask anything, no judgment part of the lesson, and an 8th grade boy asked him, does pussy from different girls taste different? And my then 24-year-old husband said, yeah, for sure, like if she smokes or something, you can taste it. Vegetarian girls taste the best. OMG. He does not work there anymore, obviously. Thankfully in the last 20 years, he's become an awesome educator. He's a little less green now, and would totally hold that train of conversation now. We had a female teacher, and as she was showing us how to put a condom on this rubber dick, my friend asks if she won't show us how to do it with the mouth. You could tell she had tried to prepare for this moment, yet she somewhat awkwardly replied, hey, I think I'll leave that to your SO. And what if he doesn't know how to do it either? You could just see her die inside. She went through the rest of her material as fast as she could, and the rest of the lesson was very awkward. Not a teacher, just a horrified bystander to this horrific question, asked completely seriously by a classmate in 9th grade. During the condom chapter, she raised her hand and asked if in emergency situations, tinfoil could be used as a condom. There was no sound from anywhere in the room. Not even from the teacher. We all just stared at her until she turned beet red and shrunk back in her seat. Not a teacher, and not even in sex ed class, but in 6th grade, I had 2 friends tell me they heard from their sisters that your first period goes like this, instead of having different symptoms at once, acne, cramps, etc. You went through a bunch of stages. Like, first you'd get just cramps for a week, then just acne, and so on with each symptom, and when you got through all of them, then you'd be ready for your first period. Oh, and when you got your first period, it hurt just as much as having a baby, cause you have to push out all the blood since it's never happened before. Yeah, luckily I did the smart thing and asked my mom if that was true. Thank God first periods are not the scary as hell way my friends' sisters put in their imagination. I got my first period in my undies in the locker room. because I had no symptoms and no idea I'd started until it was already happening. I wasn't even startled by it like I thought I'd be. The first thing I thought was, oh thank God, now I know for sure none of that stuff I heard is true. In that way I was actually pretty lucky. I hope my health teacher from high school isn't on here. So here it goes. I was a freshman in high school. These kids were talking about queefing. I started laughing and then asking what that is, and my health teacher starts laughing and saying you really don't know what that is. So I told him I never heard the word, so he kind of sighed and goes, well, I'm teaching sex ed, so I can get away with this, and goes on to tell me the exact definition, and I was even more confused. God bless sex ed teachers, because that must have been awkward for Mr. Rowe. Okay, I'm not a teacher, and I don't know if this is disturbing. It's kinda more of a facepalm moment, but when we started this class in middle school I sat next to one of my friends at the time, who was a boy. I'm a girl, but that has little to do with the story. I started getting the impression that my friend was cheating off of me, but I figured it wasn't that big of a deal. He was probably just nervous cause he couldn't remember something, so I never said anything about it, and we were both getting passing grades. Fast forward to gym class one day, and we had to make groups of 4. I partnered up with my friend from health class, and we found another pair, 2 girls who constantly fooled around in class, but hey, it was gym. While waiting for everyone else to group up and receive further instructions from the teacher, the 2 girls were wrestling, and one girl accidentally kicked the other, who then loudly exclaimed, "Ouch. You kicked me in the crotch." To which my friend confidently declared, "Girls don't have crotches, they have vaginas." Everyone just stared at him silently, thrown off by his statement. It was then I felt like I had confirmation that he was indeed cheating off of me in health class. I was one of the students. We had a break and our teacher, Mr. R, was very well liked by the students. This one kid in the class, who we wondered why he wasn't in special needs class. Not trying to be mean, but it was a known fact he didn't have all the gears working properly up in the noggin. For example, his classroom is down the hall from mine, and would casually walk past our classroom with his pants around his ankles, and it was a gamble whether he'd have underwear on, and not seeing anything wrong anyways. So he came back from the bathroom with his pants on, thankfully, and comes to listen to Mr. R's story. He then asks a question and locks eyes with Mr. R while he has both his hands visibly grasping his crotch. I have never heard a person yell, "Get your hands out of your pants," while you speak with me like that before. Being a class full of preteen boys, you can bet we were crying on the floor from laughter. Not disturbing, but considering he tried to blackmail a girl for 6, I'd put it there. Former friend of mine blurted out he'd need a bigger condom when the sex ed teacher told us the school nurse gives out free condoms for everyone. Teacher proceeds to show the condom to everyone and blow it, making a rather large balloon, then gave it to former friend. Former friend was just a furious crimson when everyone laughed at him. Not a teacher, but I went to a Catholic school, and when they did sex ed, they got someone from outside the school to give the presentation. Fast forward to the section on STDs and how to prevent them. The instructor says something along the lines of, the best way to be safe while having sex is to wear protection. The teacher from the school then chimed in to remind us that, as a Catholic school, they do not condone the use of condoms. Everyone in the room, including the instructor they called in, just stared at her for a moment before the lecture continued. Used to have a box on Fridays where students would drop off questions they had. I'd sort through them to answer some at the beginning of Monday's classes. One day, I was going through the submissions and came across the question, if I wanted to abort a fetus with a firearm, where would be the best place to shoot? Definitely wasn't going to answer it, but it lived in my mind rent-free for a good couple hours, until chores in the weekend shuffled it out. I came back in the next week, everyone was back in their seats, and I called everyone to attention. Loner kid in the back had his hand raised, a fairly nervous expression on his face. I pointed at him, and he repeated the exact same question verbatim. That was the most nervous I've ever been in front of any group of people, but this was the job I chose, so I gritted my teeth and told him you should have put a serious tag on this question. In grade 9, we had a kid in our class who moved from Eastern Russia. He was 100% a communist. He told the class that birth control was the woman's responsibility, that they should stay home and look after the children, and everything else a good housewife should be. He was dead serious. He argued about female orgasm not being real, and even if it was it didn't matter. We thought this kid was joking, and so did the teachers, but nope, this guy was steadfast in his beliefs. Pretty sure he had to transfer schools, but we didn't see him again after that semester.